So, hello, we are here at the W-JAX conference in Munich. I'm here with Raluca Khessin and Emmanuel Schmitt from Accenture. Very nice to have you here. So you hold a keynote today where you started with a quote from Jeff Bezos from Amazon. He said to his employees, anyone who doesn't use APIs will be fired. So this is perhaps to illustrate that APIs are becoming real business drivers today. What do you see in the API economy today?
What we see today in the API economy is an explosive growth in the number of APIs. You can see that everywhere out there, APIs are becoming more and more important. And what is striking is that not only digital companies are looking to implementing APIs, but also big organizations where their core business is non-digital. So that means that there is a shift in the IT world towards digitization, and this is empowered by APIs.
What are the real adoption drivers, perhaps the current adoption drivers and the future adoption drivers of this API economy?
We see several different forces that are pushing to the need of APIs, and those are cloud, mobility, Internet of Things, big data, and social interaction. All those forces empower individuals to communicate with each other and exchange information. And this is happening by using APIs. So API is the key technology that is at the center of all those trends that are very popular nowadays.
Yeah, thank you. And more than just a technology API, what is differ from a raw RESTful approach or a technical approach is that API brings not only business orientation but also technical orientation. So today, when we are talking about API at our client side, we are more talking to business team than technical team at the very beginning, because API as a product or as a way to sell new to get new market share or to sell new product is becoming more and more critical in the digital market so far. So the first driver is the business today of the API, and it happens that API is based on REST and on new technologies, but API today is first business things.
Can you give any advice to organizations how they can really profit from this API economy today?
There are various perspectives to let's say, enjoy the power of API from a business and from a technical perspective. From a business perspective, I think that industry should elaborate an API strategy. So to say, what are the most important data or service you are selling today to your client? What is the next coming future in terms of business and in terms of use case? That's the first one. The second one is how to empower the API platform you will develop to manage your API. So there is the technology side, which is mostly based on REST, on JSON, JavaScript, stuff like that on the technical side. API platform is on top of that. It offers a lot of different features, like how to enable developers to work with your product, how to manage documentation, how to communicate and to market your product, but also how to get insight from your product, like analytics, big data. We are talking about the disruption of Internet of Things. But Internet of Things is a huge amount of data that will go through the internet and through your API. So if you want to get insight from this API, you should be carefully manage the analytics side of this offering. And also, last thing that is important in the API platform movement from a technical perspective, it's also the main objective is to capitalize on existing data. It's not rebuilding a new API from nothing. What is the value in the firm today is the existing data, and what it gets to go on the market, on the digital market, it's the API platform.
What challenges do you see in this API economy today?
As API are becoming more and more business critical on their own, or also there are component or existing product they are becoming more and more business critical. From a SLA perspective, if you are running a mission-critical business using API, you should be sure that your API has the same SLA. But also from a security and from a data policy perspective, because we see two types of API today. One is services, and one is data-driven. And the one that gives more value today is data-driven, but data it's the most valuable asset of a firm today. So the security around this data are very critical, and the policy around that are also very critical. Other challenge we see is the simplicity of adoption. How you manage that developer will use your API more than other one. It's also a very competitive landscape. During the keynote, we took the example of Stripe versus PayPal as a service of payment as an API. That's a good example. We saw also telco as a service and API with a service like Twilio. They are very competitive landscape, and the developer adoption and the simplicity of using your API is critical for the product adoption.
What's coming in the API platform world?
We see several different trends, actually. One is rationalized the way to build API, the whole API lifecycle management, actually, from the principle, from the strategy, actually, the principle, the design, the build, test phase, and all of that required existing, but also adaptation to existing tools and methodology. And here comes first driver is industrialize this adoption. API is no longer tactical, so you should be careful about publishing a product in an industrialized manner. Another key trend we see is the capacity to build new business or new product using composition of API. A lot of new products are based on API. A lot of new ideas coming from startup of just composition of API, and we see this APIization of application, one of maybe a new trend in how to build application, but also internally. That is to say, if you are building private API, in the end you can have business-oriented people that will build custom application on top of this, mission-critical API. It's a new way to build application, and with a new promise comparing to SOA, which is not new, is that it brings business value into this technical component.
So okay, thank you very much for these insights, and yeah, great to have you here. Enjoy the JAX conference.